is Monday, August 10th, 2026, and we left off on Genesis 21. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears... And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast. Sorry, getting a little feedback. And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on that day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. That's interesting. So I wonder, laughing at what or why? What can you tell me about this passage and its interpretation? What was he laughing at? Or was it more that Sarah was just upset to see him joyful and just existing? What is going on here? This is one of those verses where a surprisingly large amount of interpretation hangs on one Hebrew word. And your question, was Ishmael actually doing something hostile, or was Sarah reacting to the painful sight of him happily existing alongside Isaac, gets right to the ambiguity. I cannot talk today. The Hebrew of Genesis 21:9 is roughly, Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, Metzahek. Metzahek? The word comes from sakek, to laugh. It is the same root behind Isaac's name, Yitzhak. He laughs, or he will laugh. That's interesting. So at the most literal level, Sarah sees Ishmael laughing or playing. Oh, I see. Okay. The ESV footnote tradition and other translations sometimes render it laughing, playing, or mocking. But mocking is already an interpretation of what his laughter means. And that matters enormously. The immediate context makes the scene almost painfully ironic. Isaac has just been weaned, and Abraham throws a huge feast. Then then it says, but Sarah saw the son of Hagar laughing. And immediately Sarah says, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. Notice something striking. Sarah herself doesn't say that Ishmael hurt Isaac. She doesn't say he mocked my son, he attacked Isaac. She doesn't even use Ishmael's name. Her stated concern is inheritance. He shall not be heir with my son Isaac. That makes your second interpretation quite plausible. The problem may not simply be what Ishmael is doing. The problem is what Ishmael represents. He's Abraham. My gosh. He is Abraham's son. He's older than Isaac. He's standing there at Isaac's celebration, and he's laughing. And the laughing word is brilliantly loaded. This is where the Hebrew storytelling gets fascinating. Sarah previously laughed when God told her she would bear a child. After Isaac is born, Sarah says, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. That's the same root, some Hebrew word. Isaac is essentially Mr. Laughter. Then, only 3 verses later, Sarah sees Ishmael laughing. So the text creates this strange mirror. Isaac equals laughter, like literally his name. Sarah equals laughter by her own admission. Everyone equals laughter by her own admission. And then Ishmael is actually laughing. And suddenly that laughter becomes intolerable. There's an almost literary sting to it. The promised child has brought Sarah the laughter she desperately wanted. But the sight of Abraham's other son participating in laughter immediately precedes her demand that he be removed. Okay. But where does mocking Isaac come from? It's not an unreasonable interpretation. Okay. I guess that's where it's landing. It's kind of weird how it's reading it out. The Hebrew verb can mean more than innocent laughter depending on context. For example, the same root is used in Genesis 19:14 when Lot's son-in-law thinks he is jesting, and in Genesis 39:14 and 17 in the accusation against Joseph, where it carries the idea of making sport of someone. And ancient Jewish interpretation sometimes understood Ishmael's behavior much more negatively. Some rabbinic readings associated the word with serious misconduct. Others understood Ishmael as threatening Isaac's position. I think it's kind of gone off the rails here, but I think it's more so that it's inheritance more than anything. And that event and him just being there highlighted that in her heart. I think it was going to happen regardless of whether she had caught him laughing or not, or whether he was like a little turd or not. This probably would have happened. But that's just my take. Man, it keeps going. Okay, so let's go back to scripture. So verse 11. Okay, verse 10. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For through Isaac shall your offspring be named, and I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Is that going to go away? There we go. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bowshot, for she said, let me not look on the death of the child. Oh wait, she was giving up on him. Let me not look on the death of the child. As she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy. And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took And his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me, or with my descendants, or with my posterity. But as I have dealt kindly with you, so you will deal with me and with the land where you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. When Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servant had seized, Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, and I have not heard of it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock apart. And Abimelech said to Abraham, What is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs that you have set apart? He said, These 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that this may be a witness for me that I dug this well. Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because there both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. Wait, so is this saying... hold on. The well... Is there a connection there? Maybe not. When Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servant had seized, let's just ask about it. Explain what is going on here. This little exchange makes much more sense when you zoom out to the relationship between Abraham and Abimelech. In Genesis 21 and 22, in Genesis 21, 22 through 34, Abraham and Abimelech are negotiating a peace treaty. Abimelech recognizes that God is clearly blessing Abraham, so he wants Abraham to swear that he'll deal honestly with him and his descendants. Abraham agrees, but then essentially says, before we make this official, there's a problem we need to settle. That problem is the well. Oh, okay. In that environment, a well was a huge deal. Abraham was living as a foreigner and a pastoral nomad with large herds, servants, and household members. Without reliable access to water, his entire household and livelihood were vulnerable. Apparently, Abraham had dug or claimed this well, but men under Abimelech's authority had taken control of it. Abimelech says, essentially, this is the first I'm hearing about it. I didn't authorize this. You never reported it to me, and nobody else told me. Okay. I see. That distinction matters because Abraham is confronting the king about the conduct of people under the king's authority. Abimelech's answer is basically, yes, they're my people, but I wasn't aware they were doing this. Okay, so they sort that and then they're on good terms. Okay. All right, so that's the end of Genesis 21. Genesis 22, verse 1. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you." And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father, "Abraham, my father." And he said, "Here I am, my son." He said, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" Abraham said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." So they went both of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy, or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram, caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, "The Lord will provide." As it is said to this day, "On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided." And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived at Beersheba. Now after these things it was told to Abraham, "Behold, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor, Uz his firstborn, Buz his brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel fathered Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Reumah, bore Tebah, Gaham, Tahash, and Makkah. So, I'm curious, just that maybe we can get a short breakdown. What do theologians say about the story of Abraham and how routinely throughout the book of Genesis, it's put on display that he is imperfect in his faith, in the sense that he chooses to deceive people about his relationship with his wife. But when it came time to actually listen to a direct order from God, he is faithful, and presumably he's never chastised or punished for some of the things we might call sin as spectators. What do theologians say about this and the importance of answering directly to God's callings? You're picking up on something that theologians have noticed for a very long time. And I think one of the keys is that Genesis itself seems quite comfortable allowing Abraham to be both the great exemplar of faith and a deeply inconsistent human being. The Bible does not present Abraham as someone who possesses unwavering faith from the beginning. It presents him as someone who learns to trust God, often painfully. Abraham's story is a progression of faith. You look at the ark. God tells Abram, back when he was Abram, "Go from your country to the land that I will show you." And remarkably, he goes. But almost immediately afterward, there's a famine. Abram goes into Egypt. He becomes afraid that the Egyptians will kill him because of Sarah, and then chooses deception. In Genesis 20 makes the second incident especially uncomfortable because Abraham explains his reasoning. He says, "I thought there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife." That statement is almost ironic. Abraham is worried that these people don't fear God enough, while Abraham himself is failing to trust that the God who promised him descendants will preserve his life. That is pretty ironic. A common Christian reading, therefore, sees these episodes not as divine approval of Abraham's deception, but as evidence of the incompleteness of his faith. Some interpreters defend Abraham more strongly. Genesis 20:12 establishes that Sarah really was. We get it. And that makes Genesis 22, the binding of Isaac, much more interesting. Genesis 22 is the culmination of a very long education in trust. Earlier, Abraham repeatedly tries to secure God's promise through his own ingenuity. God promises descendants. Abraham worries. Maybe Eliezer will be his heir. God says no. Then Sarah and Abraham attempt to produce the promised line through Hagar. God says the covenant will come through Sarah. Then Abraham laughs when God says Sarah will have a child. Then Isaac finally arrives. So by the time God says, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love," the question underlying the entire Abraham narrative has become, does Abraham finally trust the promise giver more than Abraham trusts his own ability to preserve the promise? And this time he does. So a story in perhaps the importance of the progression of our own faith. Let's see. So Genesis isn't primarily telling us Abraham was righteous, therefore God chose Abraham. It's much closer to God chose Abraham, and Abraham gradually learned what it meant to trust the God who chose him. That's enormously important to later Christian theology. Paul famously bases his discussion of Abraham not upon Abraham's moral perfection, but upon Genesis 15:6. Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. In other words, saved through faith. Paul's argument in Romans 4 specifically emphasizes Abraham's faith, rather than presenting him as someone who earned his standing before God through flawless conduct. So Abraham's failures aren't inconvenient details that Genesis forgot to clean up. They may actually be essential to the theological point. Okay. All right, that's good. So we were at the end. All right, so now we're on to Genesis 23, verse 1. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up. And Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites, "I am a sojourner and foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight." The Hittites answered Abraham, "Hear us, my lord. You are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. none of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead." Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land, and he said to them, "If you are willing that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and entreat for me Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns. It is at the end of his field. For the full price let him give it to me in your presence as property for a burying place." Now Ephron was sitting among the Hittites, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites, of all who went in at the gate of the city, "No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people I give it to you. Bury your dead." Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron, in the hearing of the people of the land, "But if you will hear me, I give the price of the field, accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there." Ephron answered Abraham, "My lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? Bury your dead." Abraham listened to Ephron. Ephron or Ephron? I'm going to call him Ephron. And Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights current among the merchants. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, the field with the cave that was in it, and all the trees that were in the field throughout its whole area, was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites, before all who went in at the gate of his city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre, that is, Hebron, in the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. Genesis 24, verse 1. Now Abraham was old, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he had, "Put your hand under my thigh." Wait, what? "Put your hand under my thigh, that I may make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and God of the earth, that you will not take a wife from my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but will go to my country and to my kindred and take a wife for my son Isaac." The servant said to him, hold on one sec. What's that about? Put your hand under my thigh. Explain this tradition or request by Abraham. What is the significance of putting the hand under the thigh? This is one of those biblical details that sounds very strange to modern ears, but it carries a lot of weight in the story. In Genesis 24, Abraham is about to send his most trusted servant to find a wife for Isaac. Before sending him, Abraham makes him swear a solemn oath. "Put your hand under my thigh, that I may make you swear by the Lord." So what does under my thigh mean? The Hebrew word translated thigh, yerek, or yerik, can literally mean the thigh or hip area. But in the Old Testament, it can also function as a euphemistic reference to the reproductive organs or loins. Okay. For example, descendants can be described as those who came from a person's yerik. So like his balls, basically. So this probably wasn't simply Abraham saying, "Put your hand underneath my leg." The servant was performing a very solemn oath gesture associated with Abraham's loins, the source of his descendants. And that matters enormously because of what the oath concerns. The oath is about the covenant family. God's promises to Abraham center heavily on offspring. Okay. Now Abraham is old, Sarah has died, and Isaac, the promised son, is unmarried. That gives the gesture remarkable symbolic appropriateness. The servant swears an oath concerning Abraham's descendants while placing his hand at the part of Abraham's body symbolically associated with descendants. Okay, so he's basically saying, hold my balls and swear upon this oath about my family. That's pretty, that's an interesting tradition. All right, so where were we? Verse 5. The servant said to him, perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son back to the land from which you came? Abraham said to him, see to it that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and who spoke to me and swore to me, to your offspring I will give this land, he will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning this matter. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia to the city of Nahor. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time when women go out to draw water. And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink and I will water your camels, let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a little water to drink from your jar. She said, drink, my lord. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also, until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water. And she drew for all his camels. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing a half shekel, and 2 bracelets for her arms weighing 10 gold shekels, and said, please tell me whose daughter you are. Is there a room in your father's house for us to spend the night? She said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. She added, we have plenty of both straw and fodder, and room to spend the night. The man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord, and said, blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and his faithfulness toward my master. As for me, the Lord has led me in the way to the house of my master's kinsman. Then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out toward the man to the spring. As soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, and heard the words of Rebekah his sister, thus the man spoke to me. He went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. He said, come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. So the man came to the house and unharnessed the camels, and gave straw and fodder to the camels. And there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Then food was set before him to eat, but he said, I will not eat until I have said what I have to say. He said, Speak on. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and to him he has given all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, You shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell. But you shall go to my father's house and to my clan, and take a wife for my son. I said to my master, Perhaps the woman will not follow me. But he said to me, The Lord, before whom I have walked, will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take a wife for my son from my clan and from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you come to my clan, and if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are prospering the way that I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let the virgin who comes out to draw water, to whom I shall say, Please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who will say to me, Drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder. And she went down to the spring and drew water, and I said to her, Please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, Drink, and I will give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. Then I asked her, Whose daughter are you? She said, The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you are going to show steadfast love and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, The thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son. And the Lord has spoken, as the Lord has spoken. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord. And the servant brought out jewelry of silver and of gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave to her brother and to her mother costly ornaments. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they arose in the morning, he said, Send me away to my master. Her brother and her mother said, Let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that she may go. But he said to them, Do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me that way, that I may go to my master. They said, Let us call the young woman and ask her. And they called Rebekah and said to her, Will you go with this man? She said, I will go. So they sent away Rebekah their sister and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, Our sister may you become, thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him. And they blessed Rebekah, possess the gate of those who hate him. What does that mean? What verse? That's verse 2460. Explain the meaning of this, especially the line of possession. This is a rich blessing, and the phrase possess the gate carries much more weight in the ancient world than it sounds like in modern English. In Genesis 24:60, is Rebekah's family blessing her as she leaves to marry Isaac. Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him. So may you become thousands of 10,000s. This is a prayer for extraordinary fruitfulness, that Rebekah would become the mother of an enormous people. Okay. What does possess the gate mean? In an ancient fortified city, the gate was the strategic center of power. City gates weren't merely doors. They controlled who entered and left the city, were crucial to its military defense, and often served as places where elders conducted legal and civic business. So to possess the gate of your enemies essentially means to defeat them and gain mastery over their stronghold. A similar saying today might be, may your descendants take control of the enemy's capital. It's not primarily talking about possessing somebody's personal property. Possess here has the sense of taking control, inheriting, occupying, or exercising dominion over something. Okay. There is an important connection to Abraham. What's especially striking is that almost exactly the same language appears just 2 chapters earlier. After Abraham demonstrates his willingness to offer Isaac, God says, I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore, and your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies. Okay, I'm still not. I get it that it's blessing the family, but I'm being a little dense here. So who is he and his? His. The pronoun is genuinely confusing in the ESV. May your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him. The him refers to Rebekah's offspring, not. Okay, yeah, right. Okay, that makes sense. All right, where were we? Verse 61. Then Rebekah and her young women arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now Isaac had returned from Beer Lahai Roi. Had returned from Beer Lahai Roi and was dwelling in the Negeb. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, Who is that man walking in the field to meet us? The servant said, It is my master. So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Okay, I think that's a good stopping point for tonight. So tomorrow we'll pick it up on Genesis 25. How long is Genesis? It's a very long book. Genesis, oh my gosh. There's 50 chapters. Wow. Okay, so we're halfway through. Or we will be shortly. So we'll pick it up tomorrow on Genesis 25, verse 1. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to drop a sub. The talking is just not there tonight. Don't forget to drop a sub, share it with a friend. God bless you guys, and good night.